Silicon Valley, a global hub of technological innovation, a thriving centerpiece in the world of human advancement, and yet also, somehow, a paradox, where the same people who make, pioneer, and perfect the latest social technology, if you will, don't actually want anything to do with it. I want to try something slightly different for this video and go big to small, macro to micro. And at the end, hopefully, I'll have made a compelling case for the video title that not even the tech bros actually want their tech. Let me start with this. How many people know the name Rudolf Steiner? Probably not that many, not the most well-known person out there, but for anyone who doesn't, he's a late 19th century Austrian philosopher who pioneered a modern learning system called Waldorf education. Now, Waldorf education is a bit of a quirky system. It's not without its controversy, having a certain emphasis on religious components, an extremely diverse curriculum, and a high degree of importance placed on physical movement. However, one of the more notable policies, which is enforced pretty much ubiquitously across the entire 130 or so school system throughout the United States, is limited or flatly zero technology. This is a stark contrast when compared to the rest of the broader US education system, but part of the reason why are tech giant companies such as Apple and Google. These two industry titans are consistently fighting over the education market now. iPads and Chromebooks are becoming a larger and larger part of the classroom experience, with the companies jockeying for who will have the lion's share of the upcoming sales. But as the grant programs get expanded and the average age of screen usage gets lower and lower and lower, Waldorf education is practically immune by policy. Well, it turns out that a particular San Francisco-based branch of the Waldorf education system is here in northern San Francisco, which is about 1 to 2 hours away, depending on traffic, from Googleplex and Apple's headquarters. That may seem entirely unrelated for the moment, but how about this? There is a particular section of Broadway Street in San Francisco called Billionaires Row, roughly between Lion Street and Divisorado. These are some of the richest technology entrepreneurs and former executives in the entire world living here. Larry Ellison, David Sachs, Joni Ive, Mark Benioff, etc., etc. But Billionaires Row is 2 blocks from the San Francisco Waldorf School. I think it's important to realize that this particular Waldorf school, even before COVID, cost nearly $40,000 per year per student, offering everything from preschool all the way through high school graduation. Actually, let's just go ahead and be precise with this. Tuition for the 2025-2026 school year is $17,600 for 3-day daycare, $29,300 for 5-day daycare, $39,600 for grades 1 through 4, $41,500 for 5 to 8, and $58,200 for high school. Although, at a high school level, students do begin using technology in a structured way. The fact of the matter here is that Waldorf education in northern San Francisco, even if the kid is like 7 or 8 years old, costs roughly the same as a college university. But one of the standout differences in the curriculum is zero technology for that age bracket. Here's why it matters. As these major technology companies dominate the education landscape, this particular branch of private education, as far back as 2018, was a standout success because Silicon Valley tech moguls, CEOs, and high-ranking engineers, of which the area is obviously plentiful, choose to send their children here to a zero-technology Waldorf school. They're not sending their children to the places that buy 500 iPads or a Chromebook for every student. No. They send their children for the comparative price of a college education during their stay to a place where the children are completely barred from using the devices and software that their companies invent and sell. Except it gets better than that. Or maybe I should say more obvious, not better. The majority of the research behind something called one-to-one, which was the major push in the 2010 era for every school to maintain a one-to-one ratio of computers to students. The research indicating that this was a superior learning environment, pretty much all of it, comes from an institute called Project Red, short for Revolutionizing Education. But if you dig into what Project Red actually was, because they've largely disappeared now, the website redirects to this weird-ass page at the moment. But if you go back in the Internet Archives to like 2013, 2014, you quickly find out that even as the government was citing this research as a justification for pushing more and more devices into schools, the companies behind that research were tech firms like Intel, the founding sponsor who sells computers, HP, a lead sponsor who also sells computers, the Pearson Foundation, who sold digital curricula and online assignment structures to the schools, and Smart Technologies, who sold interactive whiteboards. Honestly, I hope I don't need to say this, but when you have the company that benefits from the government contract funding the research being used to justify that contract to begin with, there's a little bit of a conflict there. If you want a really, really good example of that and what it looks like, remember that tobacco companies were funding research that claimed cigarettes weren't addictive. That is until the 1994 Minnesota tobacco lawsuit, where we found out that they were in fact addictive. The companies knew they were, as per discovered internal documents. They designed them that way and then funded a bunch of research to say the opposite. What I mean by this is that all the way back in 2010, the push was underway to put as much technology in the school system as possible because of funded research that claimed it was a good thing for the students. And yet, smack dab in the heart of Silicon Valley is a very expensive school where the children and the grandchildren of the people who created that technology attend, whose entire premise is to not use any of it. Isn't that just a little bit strange? Still, it gets better. Published by the New York Times in 2018, there's an examination of the San Francisco Silicon Valley Nanny experience, which is a service often procured by the highest ranking or richest executives and career professionals in the technology space. I mean, broadly speaking, any industry, but particularly here, it's technology. Quote, from Cupertino, which is where Apple headquarters is, to San Francisco, a growing consensus has emerged that screen time is bad for kids. It follows that these parents are now asking nannies to keep phones, tablets, computers, and TVs off and hidden at all times. Some are even producing no phone contracts, which guarantee zero unauthorized screen exposure for their nannies to sign. The fear of screens has reached the level of panic in Silicon Valley. End quote. It's a very interesting read overall, even describing how the Silicon Valley community bands together as a sort of vigilante initiative to police and enforce the desire for nannies to never allow or even use phones or tablets around the children. But the point I'm trying to make right now is that during the exact same time frame where Apple and Google were squabbling over which company would be allowed to provide the screens to the middle school education market in Los Angeles and the broader country, during that same exact time frame, the highest ranking Silicon Valley executives and professionals from those two companies and more were simultaneously enrolling their children in a zero technology learning environment and also crafting nanny contracts designed to strip the screens from their children's lives. There's no shortage of examples, by the way. I just found this particular angle of education to be the most interesting. Here's a segment from Chamath Palihapitiya, a former executive at Facebook, who had this to say when talking about whether or not his children are allowed to use the very same platform he helped create.
I think we all knew in the back of our minds, even though we feigned this whole line of like, there probably aren't any really bad unintended consequences. I think in the back, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. And I would encourage all of you, as the future leaders of the world, to really internalize how important this is. It is a point in time where people need to hard break from some of these tools and the things that you rely on. The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. And I don't have a good solution. My solution is I just don't use these tools anymore. I haven't for years. It's created huge tension with my friends, huge tensions in my social circles. If you look at my Facebook feed, I've posted maybe 2 times in 7 years. I can control my decisions, which is I don't use this shit. I can control my kids' decisions, which is they're not allowed to use this shit. And then I can go focus on diabetes and education and climate change.
That's not just, I don't let my kids use it, right? That is, holy shit, what did we do to the world? Underscoring the initial point of the video, which is that not even the tech bros really want their own tech. Now for a much more comedic example on a micro level. Friend. This right here in the background is an advertisement for the AI-powered Friend necklace wearable, which debuted sometime last year and is now shipping to market. It's effectively advertised as a replacement for human connection, which is dark already, by the way. They say things like your new roommate is waiting, or even references to it as its own individual. The vibe they're going for is not piece of software, it's someone to talk to. And the way it works is by texting you throughout the day on your phone, as it listens to your conversations and tries to join in. It's creepy, obviously, but the funny part is that not even the tech bros actually like it. Sort of unrelated, but also super related, the founder of this device, Avi Schiffman, previously became famous because he built a COVID-19 tracking website as a teenager. But if you delve into the source code of that website, you quickly found out that he was scraping all the data from another site called BNO. He got a ridiculous amount of media praise for compiling all sorts of data when the reality was more like he was just repainting a thing which other people already did the work on. But of course, that didn't stop him from bragging to Bloomberg and pivoting into the world of AI technology. Still, far more important than the credentials of the kid who wasted 80% of his entire $2.5 million budget on a simple domain name is the fact that the product is now here and the reception is precisely what everyone predicted it would be. I want to focus on this article from Wired magazine called I Hate My Friend that was written by Boone Ashworth and Kylie Robison. It's a great article, I'll link it down below, but the best parts come when these two journalists begin discussing the actual experience of using this friend. Quote, I decided the perfect place to wear it was to a funeral for an AI model. In early August, a bunch of Anthropic fans got together in San Francisco to mourn the loss of the Claude 3 Sonnet model, which the company had just retired. Further down, as I floated around the party, or funeral, and folks took notice of my friend, I was met with more questions and ire than average for a journalist in a techie setting. Skipping ahead again, the friend certainly made me some enemies. One of the Anthropic researchers in attendance accused me of wearing a wire. Fair. A friend of mine asked if wearing the pendant was legal. One attendee who works at a big tech company, holding a bottle of wine he had finished throughout the night, joked that they should kill me for wearing a listening device. Not funny. I yanked the pendant off and stuffed it in my purse. End quote. I want to be clear, I'm not laughing or chuckling at the part where someone made a rude joke. I'm laughing because she was at a fucking funeral for an AI model. And even the people at a funeral for an AI model didn't even want to be around someone wearing an AI friend. That is just objectively hilarious. Still, an even better summary comes later where we see, quote, it is an incredibly antisocial device to wear. People were never excited to see it around my neck. I found out quickly that even at the most tech-minded gatherings, the thing was a complete taboo. After the device started to ship to users, one person on X said there should be a slur for people who wear AI devices that record those around them. End quote. The macro level is technology executives taking deliberate and expensive steps to create distance between the tech that they build and the offspring they produce, after funding the very research that was used to shoehorn technology into every aspect of the early education environment. While the micro level is this one product, as in even the fans of AI being viscerally opposed to someone other than them wearing an AI friend near them. Of course, that makes no mention of the product's actual quality either, which is what Boone Ashworth decided to write about, describing how the necklace didn't work properly and then proceeded to argue with him repeatedly, offering up rude remarks and passive-aggressive responses as if they didn't like each other. But for the purpose of demonstrating that not even the tech bros don't want to be around their own tech, I think Kylie Robison really hit the nail on the head. Even at the most tech-minded gatherings, as in the funeral for an AI model, the thing was a complete taboo. Sadly, there's not a whole lot to be done about this anymore. If you have money, you can avoid the downside that these tech bros inflicted upon the rest of the world, just like they do for their own children now. But the damage overall is just pretty much done. Adult literacy rates in the United States are currently falling. But I'd be willing to bet that if you went and checked out that San Francisco Waldorf school, despite the fact that they have zero technology and fail to maintain a 1-to-1 ratio in the classroom, I'd be willing to bet that they have a near 100% literacy rate by age 10. Bottom line, take the screens away from your kids more often because not even the tech bros want or support their own tech. At least not when it comes to family or personal privacy. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. A special VPN deal, of course, locals and Patreon, channel memberships, best way by far, etc., etc. Merch, social media, you get the picture. But I'll cut it there and just stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.